So thank you so much for waiting. I believe we can get started. Am I audible? Okay. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining
Yes.
the Lunch and Learn webinar. And today's topic will be about domestic violence and immigration. So many individuals who are facing abuse also have to navigate the unique legal and systemic challenges. And we believe it's critical for them to understand their protection, rights, and of course, the resources that are available to them. So to discuss that topic today, we're joined by a distinguished panel of speakers. We have a family lawyer and we have an immigration consultant and an immigration lawyer. So I would be introducing our speakers individually. So starting with Barrister Lucy, she is an associate lawyer at Osuji and Smith, and her practice spans across family law, employment law, civil litigation, personal injury, wills and estates. So Lucy is deeply committed to social justice and community service, and she volunteers with organizations such as Women's Center of Calgary, Calgary Legal Guidance, and of course, Ruth House. So we're excited to have you on board, Barrister Lucy. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And then we have Dr. Iwande. So Dr. Iwande is a researcher and author, a seasoned human resources professional, and an outstanding immigration consultant. So her passion includes helping employers building their human capital, infrastructure, and policies. She also has over 20 years of experience in human resources, and her leadership skills span the private and public sectors. Dr. Iwande holds a doctorate degree in organizational leadership, a postgraduate degree in human resources and project management, and a postgraduate certificate in immigration and citizenship from Queen's University. We're happy to have you on board, Dr. Iwande. Welcome. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then we have Barrister Obina with us. He's an immigration lawyer. So Barrister Obina is a legal professional with over 15 years of combined experience in banking and finance, project financing, investment advisory, and legal practice. He's known for his analytical mindset and client-focused approach, and he excels at understanding clients' need and delivering tailored solutions. His strong interpersonal skills and commitment to service has enabled him to make a meaningful impact in every role he undertakes. So welcome to the webinar, Barrister Obina. We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
So in today's session, we'll be trying to navigate through the three different speakers by asking them questions. If at all, at any point, if anybody has a question, please feel free to type that out in the chat, and we would definitely have time for the speakers to address your questions. I believe we can get started. So the first question will be to Barrister Lucy. So what legal options do you believe are available for someone who's looking to leave an abusive partner, especially when the children are involved?
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Obina and Dr. Yewande. It's a pleasure to see you guys. I meet you for the first time. And to everyone who is present today, thank you for joining. Well, separation is caused by different circumstances, and depending on the number of children that are involved or the circumstances of the children, and also the dynamic that had existed in the marriage or the relationship, each person will have a different option. I'm going to give different scenarios. So, for example, both parties were working during the marriage, meaning that if the wife was experiencing domestic violence or the husband was experiencing domestic violence, they will be in a position where they can easily leave with the children and be able to afford an alternate accommodation. It's easier that way. Affordability is key. But let's say one of the parties was financially dependent on the other party, then we have the issue of affordability, right? Having the financial resources to afford an alternate accommodation. And if you have more than one child, you can understand that it's heavy to carry children with you if you don't have where you're going to, right? It will expose them to, well, the options being shelters. Good thing that we have Roots House and other organizations that provide, faith-based, culturally appropriate shelters, accommodations, but say they don't fall in the category that, Roots House can accommodate them, they'll have to go maybe to the women's shelter or the drop-in center, somewhere in the city where they can, find shelter in the meantime while they figure out the next steps. There is no one way to deal with this. I would say that the circumstances of an individual's life determines what steps they can take at a given time. If someone is experiencing domestic violence and there's an incident that, happened right away, they have choices. So what I would say is at that point of time, the choices that they will have are, one, phone the authorities. If you're calling 911, then you're getting police to get involved, and the police will take the statements and then determine what the next steps are. If you believe that you do not want to get the criminal aspect involved in it, then you could call, the non-emergency police or 311, I believe. They don't take you to the criminal court. Alternatively, you could, if you are able to escape, you can go to a shelter like Roots House or any other shelter in the city to find interim safety, and then they can guide you on how to get an emergency protection order. Say thereafter. I'm going to use an example of a woman again. If you're in a position where you're experiencing an incident of violence at that time and you have children, young children, and you find that it's impossible or very inconvenient for you to live with them right away, you have the option of removing yourself first, finding safety, and then being guided on the next steps, either by the shelter staff, or if you can find some legal services which provide pro bono services to individuals in the city, they will guide you on the next steps, which will also extend to you caring for those children. Most people might get caught up with, oh, if I leave, I have 4 kids that are all under the age of 10. Where do I go to with 4 kids? Think of the immediate step that you can take right now to put yourself in a safe place first, and then take next steps. When it comes to children, the courts are open to considering all circumstances, but you can't save your kids if you are not safe. If something happens to you at that point and you don't take steps to remove yourself and find shelter in the meantime, you can't be able to gather yourself and put everything together to come back for those children that need safety as well. So my suggestion would be that if you are experiencing violence, take steps to remove yourself first, put yourself in a safe place. And while you're at that safe place, whether it's a shelter, a friend's house, community living accommodation, they will help guide you on the next steps. If you need a protection order, like an EP or emergency protection order, they will guide you on how to get it. If they're not able to guide you, you can go to the courthouse and get it right away. Once you get there to the courthouse, or you phone a justice or one of the staff of those institutions helps you, you will mention the fact that you have children and that the children are back at the family home, and the justice making that order will be able to apply that discretion to grant a protection order which covers your children as well. And once you've gotten that protection order, the next steps could be that you will be sent back to the house and the perpetrator of the violence will be removed from the house, which means that you and your kids will remain in the house. And the person that is causing the abuse and the violence will be removed. So that's safety. But you couldn't get that if you had remained there, right? Another thing is that they could help you find alternate accommodation, particularly if it's a rental and you're not paying the rent and they say they cancel the lease or something. So First step, remove yourself into safety.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer. I like how you cater to people with different situations. So that was helpful. And then following on that, my next question will be to Dr. Yuwande. So Dr. Yuwande, what do you think are some of the most common immigration challenges that are faced by individuals who are experiencing abuse or domestic violence?
Good afternoon once again. Thank you so much, Barrister Lucy and Obina. I'm meeting you two for the very first time, and thank you also for the audience, and thank you for having us today. So most of the immigration issues that you find that is so compelling will have to go with people that has temporary status. It could be a spouse just sponsoring a spouse, probably a husband sponsoring the wife or wife sponsoring the husband, or someone that is on a visitor visa and has a host. The host could be the children, could be the partner as well. And so one of the issues that people think first is the status. How will this issue affect my status? I have handled cases where a spouse will have filed PR application for the partner, and because of domestic issue, called immigration and withdraw the application that they don't want to sponsor their partner anymore. Or where you have a host, it could be children when their parents are around to visit them, and probably the husband having issue with the mom or the wife has an issue, and to the extent of calling police on each other, and then the visitor become a victim. And the first thing that faced with the person is that how does this affect my status? And from immigration perspective, it depends on what the situation is. Sometimes charges are involved, sometimes charges are not involved. And thank God I have barristers here, depending on whatever the circumstance. But from immigration point of view is we always hammer on documentation. Whatever happened, ensure that you have documentation. And I will allow the barrister to talk about the legal aspects. I don't handle that, but what I do handle is how does it affect your status? It may not affect you if it's just like no charges is laid, the police is called on you. And one thing I want people to know is that please, your temporal status does not erase your rights as a person. It depends on what happened. If you have not done anything wrong, if you have not violated the law, you always have your own point to say. Just make sure that you seek legal advice, you get support, safety if you need to, and thank God for NGO like Ruth House and some other ones around that you could always call. And we are always around. I am around to help my Nigerian or even whoever that comes to a table for immigration issue to help you, to calm you down, listen to you, give you advice of what you should do. And also to why it is important for documentation is because of now and the future. Because depending on how the situation is, it may affect you to leave the country, or you may still stay, it may not affect you depending on what the issue is. However, one thing that you need to take note of is that keep your documentation, that if you need to apply for extension, or you want to reapply for your visa, we may need this because it then becomes that when he asks you that, is there any criminal issue involved in the past? You need to check that box, yes. Then the explanation will follow. So now that is where the documentation is very important, because if you don't have any, then become like, okay, we need to go and search the record. And if you don't have privilege of knowing what is in your record, that is where the issue comes in. But as much as you keep the documentation, you seek legal advice, you ask for support, take yourself for safety, then you are good to go. I know there may be other questions to dig deep into this, but in the interest of time, I will just stop here. But if other questions follows, then we can dig deep on what is steps to take. How do you address this? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Iwande, and thank you for underscoring the importance of maintaining documentation, which can be overlooked at times. Thank you so much for that answer. And my next question will be to Barrister Obina. So what legal protections exist in Canada for immigrants who are experiencing domestic violence, regardless of their status?
Yes, I believe the first speaker had already, made reference to some of them, Barrister Lucy, but I will just throw more light on that. So I just want to, emphasize that, in Canada, regardless of your immigration status, you have the right to safety and protection from any form of domestic violence. Okay, abuse it can be physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, financial. It may even involve threats, coercion, or controlling behavior. So, for the fact that somebody does not have a documented status in Canada does not mean the person does not have any legal protection. Okay, that's number one. So immediate legal protection applies to everyone. Okay, whether you're undocumented, whether you're on a visitor, study, or work permit visa, whether you're a refugee claimant or permanent resident. Okay, like my friend did mention, you could call 911 in an emergency situation. You can apply for what we call restraining order. Okay, assuming you don't want to, like she said earlier, you don't want the criminal aspect of, immigration to creep in, because if it goes, towards that route, there will be other collateral damages. So in that situation, you could seek a civil restraining order. Having taken the previous steps, my friend had advised, leaving the house, moving out with the children, or if in the case where there are no kids, moving away from that scene, you could go for a restraining order. You could contact Ruth House to provide some advice, to counsel, but if the matter becomes, something that is so, it's escalating and something that could actually lead to injuries to the person and all that, you could escalate it to the level of EPO, to the level of, involving the police, which will now trigger criminal proceedings if the person is charged. Okay, so that said, you should also note that you have other pathways to still remain in Canada, even if you're in an abusive relationship. You can leave that relationship and still remain in Canada legally, especially when your status is based on another person's status. So you're more or less piggybacking another person. For instance, your spouse is a student and you're here on, for instance, spousal open work permit. So what that means is that your status is subject to your spouse's status. And if relationship breaks down, there's a chance that you cannot renew your permit, you will be out of status. But do not be afraid. You can actually, take advantage of the legal resources to actually come out of that domestic violence. That's what we call family violence temporary resident permit. So if eventually you become out of status simply because the relationship had broken down, provided you have kept documentary evidence. My friend, the immigration consultant, had mentioned that that's Dr. Yewande mentioned that we should keep records. Okay, so you can actually benefit from family violence temporary resident permits. It's a 1-year type of permit that will allow you to work. That application is free. You are able to work, and you can even extend that 1-year permit. And you can also take it further, to H&C application. Usually after the TRP is approved, you start working, you're out of the vulnerable situation, no more abuse from your spouse, you can then also apply for HNC, for permanent resident based on the abuse you've suffered or exploitation you've suffered from maybe an abusive worker in this circumstance. So generally, you are protected, okay? And this protection is regardless of your status, whether you've been out of status, whether you have no documentation, whether you have status that is tied to another person, that is your spouse's status, you are always protected. If you don't know what to do, simply call Root House. Root House is more like, I consider them a triage process. They will listen to you, talk to you, and now be in a position to refer you to the appropriate professional that would give you the advice you may need. But just take note that you are properly protected. You're legally protected. You have legal options. I think that answers that question without throwing more, adding more details. But that's the summary of that of my answer. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Pastor Robina. And I believe we all just learned about, or at least myself, the family violence permit. I think that's new information. And I believe Mr. Clarence has raised his hand.
Yes, good afternoon, all. I appreciate the panel and I appreciate the discussion. But one question I do have for the legal fraternity is, when we have professional members who have convictions on their record, where can we obtain the information for them to apply for expulsion to ensure that their professional characters can be redeemed in terms of really that information? I have two engineers who have found themselves having convictions on their records, and finding lawyers who really are in position to really support them for application for expunging it. It's a limited find, and I would like to know where can that information be supported through Root House or through Mandela House, to ensure when we have that situation, there is a place for that information to be retrieved or contacted for further support.
Hi,
Okay.
Clarence. Sorry, Obina. Do you want to go first?
No, anybody can go. Just go ahead, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so good afternoon, Mr. Clarence. It's good to see you. If I understand you correctly, you're asking about individuals who have a record of domestic violence or some form of criminal record that impedes on their professional progression, and how Roots House could retrieve that information to support them on an ongoing basis?
Yes, who can recommend legal references for lawyers who have the ability to do the expunging application for these individuals, to making sure that they can process it depending on the status of the domestic conviction that is being put on their case.
Okay, I'm going to take a shot at that question. So, being a lawyer, I understand that we are regulated by the Law Society. So, regarding of whatever province you are practicing in, the Law Society of that province is responsible for you. They're responsible for regulating and disciplining you in terms of conduct. But then, if someone who is a lawyer, for example, has a criminal record from a domestic violence behavior or proceeding, I believe that if they were not already a lawyer, the Law Society would be aware of it. And if, say, they became a lawyer after having that record on their file, then the Law Society would have investigated it already. That's part of our licensing process. And Obina can give more light on this. Before we become lawyers, and as part of our licensing process, we have to provide detailed information regarding bankruptcy and criminal background history and all of those things. If they are pre-existing, the Law Society will know. So if they came on the person's record after they already became a lawyer, I'm not sure that would impede on the ability to continue practicing law unless they went to jail or something. But then the Law Society has its processes to deal with, and unfortunately, individual lawyers, we have no control over that process. It's an independent body, and they will go through it with the person to determine whether it warrants a sanction or some form of action, right? If it doesn't, then of course they'll maintain the license. But in terms of the actual record, the criminal record, that is something that gets taken care of by the court. If someone's behavior leads to a criminal proceeding, then the criminal court has jurisdiction over that behavior. And if it turns out that it leads to a restraining order or a release order, some no contact order, then Obina can shed light again. Once that order kind of elapses, which is usually for 1 year, further actions to be taken, which means that they might get it removed depending on what level of severity it is. But the governing body doesn't really have control over that. Those are two separate things. Your civil your actions through the court or regulated by the court is different compared to your conduct as that professional, because the Law Society, or I believe that the regulatory body of engineers, can only regulate the conduct as it pertains to carrying out your professional obligations, not in terms of your criminal background. So your criminal record will impact how they perceive you or what action they could take against you. If you owe rent, for example, if you don't pay your mortgage or you abuse someone on the street, you will get suspended by the Law Society. But then that person can also decide to sue you in the civil court. Those are two different things. About expunging it, I'm not sure if how an adult can go about expunging a criminal record, but then Obina could speak to it. If you're a lawyer, I understand that you have to be of good conduct. If you find yourself in a situation where you beat up somebody and they take you to criminal court and there is a criminal record on your stuff, well, I don't know how you deal with that, but you have to deal with that separately with the court and the Law Society. Different actions, yeah.
Well, thank you for that clarity. But just to simplify and rephrase my questions.
Yes, I was
There
going
are two.
to.
Yeah.
I was going to.
There,
Sorry, Clarence. So sorry. I was just going to quickly ask you one question because it seems to me that the question wasn't well understood. So, yeah, your question, can you quickly confirm
the
whether you're
question
asking,
is,
whether you're asking?
I have two professional engineers
Mhm.
due to domestic violence have had a conviction on their records. Now, when they applied for a job in the engineering fraternity,
Sorry, we can't hear you. We cannot hear you, Clarence.
Can I believe there was some network issues? Can we pass the DS right? Yes, Pastor D. Am I audible? I think we can jump back to the questions. The next question would be.
So I was going to. Okay, are we going to return to that? Because I believe that was a very important question.
Yeah, Mr. Clarence, can you unmute and yeah. I don't think he's audible still. Yes, Barrister Obina, if you understood the question, we would really appreciate it if you can.
Yes, I did. What he wanted to find out is how to apply for record suspension. He did confirm that he had 2 engineers who had been convicted. So people have criminal record, okay, regardless of whether it's domestic violence or not. His question is, how do you deal with record convictions so you are able to secure employment in Canada? I believe that was his question. Okay. So and he was asking if Ruth House could also refer them to lawyers who handles stuff like that. I just want to reconfirm that I practice majorly criminal and immigration. And we handle record suspensions. We deal with issues of parole. Okay, anytime we have anybody that's caught in that way. Okay, but the person will be eligible for record suspension. Okay, we handle it. So, but it will depend on whether the person, first of all, has fully completed the sentence, including whether it was jail, conditional sentence, probation, fines, restitution. Typical waiting periods will be 5 years. That is if the conviction was on, a summary conviction, that is a less serious offense. But if it was an indictable offense, person will have to wait for 10 years after serving the sentence rather. Okay. And some offenses are ineligible completely, depending on, some more serious offenses are totally, not eligible for record suspension. Okay. The steps, we have the, steps to get that done when the person has met this minimum threshold. The person will need to get his or her RCMP criminal record, the fingerprint, book an electronic fingerprint with an accredited fingerprint company. We have some of them that we work with, or they may also go to police service locations where they offer digital fingerprints. And then, of course, they will confirm to them that it's for a record suspension. They provide documents for each conviction, like proof of conviction, sentence details, confirmation that fines were paid. Okay, and then get local police record checks for the last 5 years. Complete what we call PBC package, right? That package is more or less like an official record suspension application guide from the Parole Board of Canada. So I will not go into details, just to confirm that is something that is possible. You can apply to suspend your record. What it simply means is to erase it from your record, okay? And we help with that as well. So if you have anybody that is interested in that, you can reach out to Ruth House and they will be able to direct you accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you for the Barrister Obina and Barrister Lucy.
I had a question for Obina, if you don't mind. So Obina, in a process like that, who do you make the application to?
So it goes to the Parole Board of Canada, PBC.
Okay.
The Parole Board of Canada, yes.
Okay. And that's general for all professions, or is it general for all professions?
No, it's got nothing to do with professions, okay?
Okay, it's just the record itself.
Just the record, the criminal record. It's got nothing to do with professions, you know. For a simple fact that somebody has that record, okay, and person wishes to have it expunged from their, from the RCMP system, okay, yeah, yeah. So it doesn't matter what what their profession is, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. I don't do criminal law, so thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.
But that was very helpful to know. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrister Rubina, for answering that question. My next question, jumping back into the questions we were dealing with, would be to Dr. Yuande. So we would like to know what options or pathways are available for someone whose immigration status is tied to their partner or spouse.
Okay, thank you. I think Barrister Obina has mentioned some of the available options when he was talking. Depending on the situation, anyone that is experiencing domestic violence or threat by the host, which could be sponsorship, spousal sponsorship, H&C is one of the options. The person can apply to that, or temporary resident permits, or open work permits, or refugee claim, depending on the situation and how the person is able to handle the application. And for these, I always tell our clients, especially my clients, right from onset, you are processing your visa application from your home country. Ensure that your records are accurate and you have access to them. And why I say that is that whatever you have put in the past, stay in the database forever. So you cannot say that you are black and white in your application, your initial application from home country. Then you come here, situation happens, and you now want to say it's green and yellow. It's very tricky. So it's always very good to be consistent and factor it in mind that anything could happen. And if you've already been maintaining accuracy and records and anything that has to do with your application, if issues happen, you have options when you reach out. I found cases when people do not even have a clue of how they got here. Oh, my agent helped me, and they don't even know what they did. For example, my clients, they know that I will never work with you on WhatsApp because if that phone gets lost or the person that sent the information, remove it, you don't have access. But when you use your email, as far as you remember password, all your documentation is there. So when you need it in the future, we can always go back and reference it. Otherwise, we have to go and request for the whole entire through ATIP and get all the information. But to your questions, there are options, and those are the one listed: H&C, TRP, open work permit, or refugee claim, depending on the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yuande. And I would like to ask a follow-up question on that as well. So what are the first steps someone should take if they're afraid to leave due to their immigration status, given the fact that they've experienced something abusive, but they're afraid to leave because of the immigration status? What are the first steps someone should take?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question. And I want to be real here. For me, in this category, I always tell people that when you come here for the first time, number one, because it's very easy for us to discuss here, but how many people are actually on this call to know that the first step, get to know your community. What resources do I have in this city that I am? Root House is there. Community associations. If you are Igbo, we have Igbo association. If you are Yoruba, we have Yoruba association. If you are from South, if you are from Ghana, if you are from Syria, everyone, almost all Latin states are there here for you to belong to. If you don't know at all where to wants to start, once you belong to any of these associations, reach out to the president. That is where the connection starts. Oh, I know this. Oh, you do this. Like for example, I was a Yoruba president. I'm just the immediate past president. And I handle, apart from being immigration consultant, I handle so many domestic violence, and we're able to link them to lawyers, to engineers, so depending on the case, we become like the medium channel. We direct some to Root House. I have personally gone to pick people where they are fighting or what issue happened, take them to Root House, shelters, referring them to lawyers. So there are many places to start with. And of course, there are numbers to call, but some people, that is more technical to them because you don't even know which number you want to call. But at the grassroots, when you know that, oh, you are a Muslim, or you are a Christian, you have pastors, you have imam, or you are, as member, as temporary resident person, at least at the minimum, you should have all this type of information. Even if you Google Nigerian Association in Calgary, or Ghana Association, or Sierra Leone, or whatever it is, something will come up. Start from there. Reach out to them. They will now begin to be the one to link you to those resources you don't even know. Because when you say root house, some people may not like, I don't know root house. You have to know about them before you even reach out. But you cannot go wrong if you go on Google and from that country you come, just Google and so Ghana Association in Calgary, Nigeria Association in Calgary, you will get something. Or wherever you come from, you will get an association that can start. For me, I always tell people start from there. Then others will follow. Like we have more other sources you could call, like Alberta Council of Women's Shelter is there. 247 Family Violence Information Line is there. Legal Aid Alberta is there. Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, just like Barrister Lucy said, is there. But even if those one are too technical, I don't even know them, talk less of reaching out. But start with that one I mentioned. You can't go wrong. From there, we begin to channel where to go. I hope, yeah, people can start with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yuande, for that answer. And I love how everything, again, is connecting back to community. Thank you for underscoring the importance of that as well. And my next question will be to Barrister Obina. So based on that, so what are some common misconceptions immigrants have about their rights in these situations?
Okay, so before I take on that question, just to quickly say, just like a top up from what my sister has just said, she has listed a lot of organizations that you could call. What I would say is that we have one reliable organization, one and only one reliable organization that I always refer people to, and that is Root House. So what we are saying is that once you find yourself in that situation, call Root House. There are a lot of them, call them and they will take it off from there. Okay, so I just want to add that to what she had just said. Okay, so in terms of misconceptions, right? Yeah. Number one misconceptions people have is that they will lose their status if they leave the abusive relationship, right? They will be deported. So, and that's one of the reasons people remain in an abusive relationship. So what I can tell you is that that is a misconception. It's not a fact. It's not true. You should leave an abusive relationship while you are still alive. Okay? And when you leave, you will not be deported. I've indicated a type of application that we call FVTRP, Family Violence Therapy. As long as you document everything that happened, you should be able to apply for that. And they're very quick. We normally get responses within 3 weeks or less. And you get a work permit, you're out of that relationship.
Enjoyment master. Enjoyment minister.
Sorry, it looks like someone is unmuted. Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Muted. Yeah, apologies.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, another misconception is that some people feel that they can't call police because they are not a citizen, or because they are not documented, right? Because they worry about the immigration consequences. Okay, so but that is not true. You can call the police. I did mention earlier that the protection, your right to protection is not hinged on your immigration status. As long as you're in Canada, you can have access to protection from all the relevant authorities. Again, the next conception is that my sponsor can cancel my status. So if you're already a permanent resident, your sponsor cannot revoke your PR status, okay? Because the relationship ends. That's not the issue. That's not possible. Then if the application is pending, we've seen situations where pending PR applications are canceled. That's fine. Even if it's canceled, you can still get some relief. So don't remain in fear and believing that it will be canceled, or when it is canceled, you cannot have any other alternative. Now, some people also have this misconception about the injuries, as in documenting abuse. Some believe that they need physical injuries or even a police report to get help. That is not true. Because abuse, domestic violence, does not manifest only in visible physical injuries. Sometimes domestic violence can be emotional, it can be verbal, it can be sexual. It could be financial control, it could be coercive control, right? As long as you have things like text messages, emails, witness statements. For instance, you've reported this to Reuters. Reuters have canceled. Reuters can provide a report stating that, oh, I knew about this issue. IFCC will consider it. So if you have shelter records, counselor letters, I know Reuters also provides counseling services. So all those kind of documents are sufficient to substantiate domestic violence, and in order to meet the requirement for exception for temporary resident permit, which would also come with a work permit. So you don't need physical injuries, okay, on your body. Don't even wait until you get stabbed or get injured. So that is a misconception. Again, there's another misconception, that I've heard people say that when they report abuse, they believe their children will automatically be taken away because they may not have status. That is also not true. Okay, so what's important here is the seriousness of the violence you're facing, whether the children are even exposed to it, and you will not be able to take protective steps. If children are exposed to domestic violence, there's no possibility that the children will be taken away from the victim. Okay, in fact, the abusive partner will be prevented from even having an unsupervised parenting with the children. So you shouldn't entertain such fears. And then some have this conception that shelter services are only for citizens or for PR holders. Reuters can confirm that that is not true. Reuters is here for everybody, regardless of your status. So shelter services, covers everybody, regardless of your status. So you can access counseling services, or shelter services from them, regardless of your status. Okay. Then there's this misconception about not having documents, therefore I have no rights. Yeah, you may not have documents, but you're still protected. If nobody will ask you about your immigration status when you call the police or justice of peace's office and request for an EPO. They will not be bothered about your documentation. The point is that you're in danger and you need protection. Okay, so without documents, you still have your rights, especially when it comes to domestic violence, getting help, emergency help, that will help you deal with that situation. So overall, in order not to continue to reinforce these misconceptions, I would recommend you talk to Ruth House, talk to community members, just like my friend did say, talk to people in your community. They can now lead you to professionals like Ruthers who will now make the referrals to appropriate organizations, lawyers that will give you the right advice. And do not take advice from roadside professionals, people that claim to know. They keep giving people, misinforming people on the street. Okay. Yeah, make sure you're not getting your advice from anybody you see, what we call beer parlor counseling. Okay. Talk to the right people, call Ruth House, they're always available. You will be directed to the right place. We've rescued a lot of people who would have been out of the country or for some reason would have remained in an abusive relationship simply because of misconceptions. Okay. So yeah, those are the few things I can say. But overall, reach out to the people around so that you get the right information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for clarifying the misconceptions, Barrister Urbina. That was really eye-opening. And before I have the final question, I would like to encourage the audience, if you do have any questions, kindly drop them in the chat box. This is the time for Q&A. And yeah, the last question for you would be to Barrister Lucy. So Barrister Urbina just mentioned some misconceptions involving children in the situation. So how does domestic violence impact decisions around child custody or support?
Thank you. This is such a learning platform today. I'm so happy that I was part of it. Just to add, first of all, to add to what Barrister Obina mentioned about the misconceptions, when it comes to reporting domestic violence, I've also encountered a lot of individuals, particularly from our Afro-Caribbean communities, who believe that the first person to report is the person who gets the leverage. That is not always the case, because we found that sometimes the perpetrators they rush to go report the incident thinking that they'll gain control over it. It's not always the case. That's why, the authorities are there to investigate it. So if you are experiencing domestic violence in a relationship or marriage, don't feel bad that the other person called the police first. The police's involvement is to make sure there's fairness, and that's the reason for investigation. So even if someone beats you up and then phones the police to lie about it, the investigation will still reveal the actual occurrences, and they'll know the truth that you were actually the victim. But then when it pertains to domestic violence and parenting issues, we do avoid using the word custody just because it's a little bit outdated. However, we refer to parenting of the children. The first rule is that the Family Court and the Divorce Act in Canada stipulates both parents must have some form of contact with the children. So don't try to bring up situations of domestic violence or cause it or provoke it in order to get leverage over another parent just because you want to avoid, contact between them and the kids. That's malicious. And of course, if the court finds out that your intention was to alienate the children from the other parent and that the situations or occurrences of violence were not as accurate as presented, it's not pleasant, right? But in the situation that those incidents happened, particularly if the children witness it, the court takes it seriously. If you were in a marriage relationship, meaning that you have a certificate of marriage, then you will definitely rely on the Divorce Act of Canada. It's a big document, but then it regulates separation, it regulates parenting, parenting relocation, decision-making, spousal support, child support is discussed as well, removing children from the city or the province and traveling with them. And one of the fundamental principles that the court takes into account when we make or discuss parenting arrangements for children is domestic violence, and we rely on the principle of the best interest of the child. if you review it, it's under Section 16 of the Divorce Act. It details a number of factors that the court must look at. So if you have a lawyer who is helping you to get a parenting order, that lawyer is already familiar with the best interest of the child principle, and they know the factors to highlight in your documents in order to show that you are in an appropriate situation or position to have the children in your primary care. It includes history of care, current child care, amenities, and all. If you were the person who experienced the domestic violence, one thing that would be good to know is whether the children witnessed it. So those things that were happening, what's the history of it? How many times has it happened? How long ago did it happen? Those details are very important. And Dr. Yewande highlighted the need to document. It's very important to document things because when you need them, you can't just say, oh, it happened. It's helpful when you have photos or you have a history of those things happening. You have dates, you have maybe police records, you have witnesses who can attest to it, because it carries weight in the ongoing decisions regarding your children and also regarding your future, co-parenting with that other person. If you're the perpetrator of domestic violence in your marriage or relationship, you risk having way less parenting time with your children. Barrister Obina also mentioned about supervised parenting. That is a thing. It means that you could be allowed to see your children, but someone needs to be present. And depending on the severity of that occurrence of domestic violence, and which is proven that it kept happening and happening, and there's proof of it, you even risk not seeing your children without a professional being present. And you will pay that professional to be present. Meaning that you're bringing someone with a licensed counselor or therapist to be present while you spend time with your children. It is embarrassing. It is humiliating for your children to know that they cannot see mommy or daddy without a professional being present. Most of those professionals are not available over the weekends. So you'll be restricted only to weekday parenting times. Most of them work only between 8:30 or 8 o'clock to 4:30, meaning that your parenting access to your kids and the time that you spend with them will be restricted to that professional's availability. It's not a good sight for you. It impacts on your emotional, psychological bonding with your kids. And which parent wants to have that? It doesn't foster your relationship with the children. And then you have to pay somebody, and they're not cheap, right? You could pay them up to $200 or $250 per hour to supervise your time with your kids, but you birthed those children. However, because of your conduct, you are now being restricted and treated like a stranger. Even if you are not asked to be supervised by a professional, there could be a requirement for you to be supervised by the other party, the other parent. That's if there is no restraining order or protection order between you two. It could state that you could only see the children at the person's house, or you could only see the children and spend time with them in a public place, so like a park, movie theater, and stuff like that. And those restrictions would torment you mentally, psychologically. It means you have to adjust your work schedule in order to have time with your kids. And they're uncomfortable, right? So that's the impact that the occurrence of domestic violence could have on a parenting arrangement for children when the parties separate. And then in terms of decision making as well, if there is a high level of domestic violence happening in the family and there's records of it happening, the court could determine that it's impossible, or the probability of both parties making joint decision is very low, because if they're fighting all the time and one is being very abusive and there is this power imbalance, then both parties cannot decide on where the child will go to school, or who the child will associate with, or if the child takes an activity or not. which means that one parent, likely the person who experienced the violence, will be the one to have the children for more time, and they will likely have more decision making compared to the other parent, right? So violence is not a good thing. Ruth's house, we preach against it all the time, and the family court doesn't smile on it, particularly when there is that ongoing occurrence. It's different if you, God forbid, assaulted somebody one time compared to when there is significant evidence of you doing it over and over, not just physically, like Barrister Obina mentioned, but also this mental torture, like use of language. You can't insult somebody over and over and abuse them, verbally, emotionally, steal their money, take their money, stop them from working, harass them at their workplace. Even if you are not causing them bodily harm, there are other forms of abuse, and those things count when we go into a family courtroom or when we're dealing with parenting matters for your children. Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much.
also, sorry, if you're not legally married, meaning that you don't have a marriage certificate, the circumstances and the approach is the same. It's just that in situations like that, we rely on the provisions of the Family Law Act. But then the best interest of the child principle, which also contains as one of it, review of whether family violence occurred, is under Section 18 of the Family Law Act. So regardless of the marriage relationship dynamic, the approach by the family court is the same. And the children are priority. So one incident or two incidents of abuse or family violence could make you experience those restrictions compared to somebody who was doing it over and over. It doesn't matter. It's just so that it doesn't happen again. That's what the court are concerned about.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. That was a very descriptive answer. And I believe Dr. Yuwande has raised her hand.
Sure. My question goes to Barrister Obina. Talking about this domestic violence. Let's say someone that the spouse, family sponsorship, and the spouse has withdrawn, called the immigration to withdraw the application that she no longer wants to support the spouse. That's one. Then again, call the police on the spouse as well. So we both know that, your temporary status does not take away your rights. You could always ask for probably open work permit, temporary resident, whatever. So let's say you are given the 1 year. Can you enlighten the audience? Within this 1 year, what could the person do? After the 1 year, if the work permit expires, so what are the options for the spouse? Or Barrister Lucy too can jump in, or Barrister Obina.
I'm not sure if Obina stepped away from his desk.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
he's back. Yeah.
back. So
Sorry,
can
can you
you
hear
want me to
me?
repeat my question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead
what I
and repeat the
said, we
question.
both said that if
Mm.
let's say in the case of a family sponsorship, that the
Okay.
spouse called the immigration to withdraw the application, she equally reported to the police, and we both say that your sister does not take away your rights, and you could always have options. The option maybe one of them is to get open work permit, and most of those permits is like 1 year. So this person get the 1 year, okay, things going well. So what are the options for this individual during and after the expiration of that 1 year permit?
So my understanding is that the withdrawal of the sponsorship was based on domestic violence, right?
Yes.
And this
According to
person,
the spouse who does not
according
want
to
to
this spouse, okay, yeah, and this spouse whose application was withdrawn is the victim, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for if the person is going for every TRP, correct? Because normally when that application is withdrawn, automatically the work permit that is associated with that application becomes void automatically. So what that means is that the person becomes out of status.
Out of status, correct.
Yeah. Now you apply for that FVTRP. They'll give for 1 year, okay? But the good thing is that it's renewable. So the strategy is that once that TRP is approved, this individual is back to work. Well, you use the same documentation, okay? You use the same documentation. If you have additional information, maybe more reports to support the H&C PR application, you put it together and then use it for a PR application, okay? And it has, it has its own separate pathway, like separate department that handles it. They are pretty fast. So while that is going on, if the FVTRP is nearing expiration, you apply again for renewal. It can be renewed. The only one that the 1 year is capped is the vulnerable sector, vulnerable person work permit. That is where somebody suffers abuse from workplace. Right? Maybe somebody came in with LMIA, your work permit is tied to an employer, but you're being exploited, okay, by this employer. So if you have evidence of that exploitation, you can file for vulnerable open work permits. But unfortunately, that one is just 1 year. It is not, there's no option for extension. That particular one, yeah. There's no option. Yeah, that person might now look at other opportunities immediately after getting the 1 year approval, start looking for other means, other ways of remaining in Canada. But for FVTRP, there's no problem. You can continuously renew it while you have your H&C. It's important to have the H&C application and also explore other PR pathways, right?
I have a question, Obina. Based on what you're saying, let's flip it and say the perpetrator was the one whose application was revoked.
Okay.
What happens in that so the person who experienced violence is the person who was the sponsor, and then the dependent spouse was the one that was the the perpetrator of the violence. So what happens to them after the application is revoked? Do they still get to apply for the same domestic violence application with immigration?
So it will not be a matter of evidence, right? So the only way they're eligible, first of all, is because they are victims, right? So if it's flipped, like you suggested, they have to now prove that they are actually not the perpetrators, they are victims, right? They provided evidence to show that they are actually were the victims, even though the other person may have escalated things to maybe withdraw the application.
Yeah.
In every domestic violence, domestic related issues can be very messy. Sometimes you don't know who is even saying the truth, right? Who is the aggressor, who is the victim. Sometimes victims act as aggressor, as if, aggressors appear as victims. Somebody, I think it was you, that mentioned something about Lucy. It was you that talked about people thinking that, if they call the cops first, they will actually get the leverage. So it's possible somebody is flipping things, but the bottom line is that you are not eligible for that application unless you can show that you are the victim. In any event, let's even assume you are the perpetrator, but you have to keep evidence that shows you are the victim. Otherwise, you are not eligible. So let's say you are not eligible, you can't apply. And again, if this matter escalated, let's assume the matter escalated, you are the perpetrator now. You'll be prepared for the consequences, especially if the matter proceeds to criminal court and you get convicted. Domestic violence conviction is treated as an indictable offense. Normally, assault is a hybrid offense. The Crown may choose to prosecute the person by way of summary or by indictable. But for immigration purposes, assault is considered an indictable offense. So assault alone can trigger deportation. And in that case, you will lose the right to appeal at Immigration Appeal Division because you've lost the right of appeal. Are you getting it? So that's for people who are temporary residents. For PR is a different rule altogether. Overall, what's important is that there is a very, very severe consequence of perpetrating domestic violence. You have no coverage for any immigration alternative, and you could be deported. You could be deported, okay, if the person is also convicted. So if anybody is in that situation, we also assist in that type of scenarios to make sure we present everything that would persuade the Crown to resolve the matter in a way, in a less intrusive manner, in a way that will not trigger immigration consequences. This is for the perpetrators now, or alleged perpetrators. So, Lucy, I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Obina. That was very helpful. And the reason I asked that is because, I mean, the goal of Roots House is not just to support the victims of domestic violence, but also we take a rehabilitative approach to ensure that there's no reoccurrence of it. So us highlighting the consequences for the perpetrator and the options for the victim is just to show that both parties get to face some kind of consequences at the end of the day. And if you're in a situation, you should be mindful that your behavior will have severe consequences. So that's why I asked that question. But thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Barrister Obina. And I believe Mr. Ben from the audience has a question. You're welcome to ask your question.
All right, thank you. A very big thank you to the team for this very insightful session. Sometimes one just wishes that the entire population is exposed to this, especially prior to getting into trouble. I mean, this is more of a restorative situation rather than preventative. And I know that Roots House is working a lot in how they can get the information out so that people are aware, so that they can avoid getting into this repair situation that the seminar is helping to do for our people. But I just wanted to underscore some of the things that have been said, and it will lean more towards, a little bit towards repair as well as preventative. So for our people, the encouragement is for us to know when things seem to be falling out of place. When we see those red flags, whether we are the ones that are showing, that are feeling that we are acting out of sync, or we notice that in our partner. And it doesn't have to be our partner alone, even our children. Because when we talk about family violence, we're talking about things that happen within the family setting. So, so we just need to be very aware of some of these triggers and make sure that we get on fixing it. Otherwise, I mean, let's imagine all the impacts that have been highlighted here. Is it on the perpetrator in court who would be denied access to their children? I mean, suppose we don't even care so much about access. What about the impact on the brain development of these children and the gaps they create? And how much effort it would take to fix it when they become adults. So the encouragement is wherever we find ourselves on the ruler, whether perpetrators, or people that have been abused, let us get help immediately. And Barrister Obina has I mean, he has amplified it several times. The Roots House could be the one-stop shop. Let us reach out. It is better that we do that early enough so that we can get all the help. I mean, Dr. Turam also mentioned it. All of the facilitators, including Barrister Lucy, it's just, at the end of the day, we want to ask ourselves, is it really worth it to go through that route to get things right? Barrister Gina was talking about a 5-year restoration or 10-year restoration. I mean, look at how much time we have to wait to get things back online just because, we had anger issues, power and control issues. So I'm coming from the point of let us reach out for help, whether it has happened or we are seeing signs that it might happen. And Roots House is just the place to run to. And the other associations that Dr. Toramu mentioned. My heart just bleeds for our people. Okay, that very little thing that we could have been able to reverse, it gets us into a big trouble that changes our landscape in the country and as a parent. So I'm just encouraging everyone here. Let's get the word out. I wish we could send these presentations to the airport, to cultural associations so that people can review it and just learn so that we can avoid some of these things. Thank you.
Kashni, do I have a minute, please?
Yeah, sure, Barrister.
So back to what Barrister Obina mentioned about misconceptions. Now, most of our people, I'm from Cameroon. I'm Cameroonian and Togolese, but born in Cameroon. And I mean, we have similar cultures, regardless of where you are. One misconception is that people could think that the raising of domestic violence or abuse in a marriage could give them leverage over things when parties separate. And now I'm flipping it to when people become malicious with that information. When there is evidence that it happened, we've already discussed the consequences and options that are available, but we cannot also deny the fact that some of our brothers and sisters use it maliciously. So when we touch on those things, it will have the same consequences, because when you report the occurrence of domestic violence, it takes time to investigate it. While it's being investigated, things are happening. Things don't come to a standstill because, they come to a standstill because you reported something. It could lead to a separation, meaning that you have to start dealing with parenting issues, child support, spousal support, property from that incident, because there is a lower possibility of you reconciling, right? And also, Barrister Obina is a criminal counsel. He could attest to the fact that when you report it and involve the police, they investigate it. But while it's being investigated in the criminal system, there are also court hearings. You're missing court to attend it just to prove at the end of the day whether you did it or not. Which means that by the time you get to the decision of whether it happened or not and what should happen next, a lot of things would have happened either through the criminal court or the family court, through every other thing before you can get to that decision. So if it turns out that somebody did not actually carry out those occurrences or do the things that they were accused of, the whole life is already messed up, because it's taking maybe a year or so to get to the decision-making point. And thereafter, you can't bring them back to where they were before those allegations were raised. And that's the other side of the coin. We shouldn't be reporting things that are not accurate, or we shouldn't be exaggerating on allegations that we know is exaggerated. If something is happening, take the steps to bring yourself to safety and get the options. Talk to Ruth's House to guide you on the options, but don't make things up because you feel like you own a house together. And by you reporting that they beat you up or they abused you or they insult you over and over or slapped your child in your presence or did something to your children, you will end up getting the house, or you will end up getting full custody, or you will end up getting way money of spousal support than you could be entitled to. Don't use it. Don't create situations because you're trying to get leverage. If a marriage or a relationship is not working, like Dr. Ben mentioned, get help through like the community organizations that we have. We're Africans, we know we can talk to our elders in the community. Our leaders are there. If it's faith-based, talk to your pastor, somebody to counsel you guys. If it's not working, go apart amicably. But if those things are not real, don't make them up. Because if you come to me or any other family lawyer and you have made up things that didn't happen because you wanted to take an advantage of the other person, we will find out. And the court will also see through your lies. And at the end of the day, you will suffer consequences as well, right? So let's not be abusive towards each other, whether it's physical, mental, psychological, emotionally, or financially, but let us also avoid creating circumstances that will leverage us over somebody. If it's not working, leave. If you try to get help and the help is not what you need, step out peacefully. It helps because you will destroy lives, your lives, the other person's life, your children's lives, with any lies that are told regarding domestic violence. It's a serious thing, which is why everybody takes it seriously. So you cannot make it up.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lucy. That pretty much summed it all up. And yeah, as we come to the end, I would like to thank everybody here who are here as part of the webinar, especially to the speakers. I believe it was a very informative and comprehensive discussion today, and I really hope everybody who's watching, including the speakers, benefited from it. And yeah, as we speak about community and how important it is to stay in touch with them or to ask out for help, we have Ruth's House here, be it legal aid or counseling or webinars like this for the community or programs for men, women, youth, kids. We have it all. So help is always available. Kindly reach out. And we do have a 24/7 support line. And yeah, I hope this webinar and this session especially benefited all of you. Once again, thank you everybody for being a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Obina and Doctor. I've learned so much from you too. I had no idea about the domestic violence application, because I do have clients, who are still going through the immigration process. And one of the concerns that they have is, oh, what if he revokes this? What if he does that, right? So knowing that you have this